Hello folks, it's Gareth. This is the Somewhere on Earth podcast, and wouldn't you just know it, it's Tuesday the 20th of August 2024. Welcome to our little studio here in London, and we have voices. Both our guests are remote today, as in they're on internet connections. They're not kind of remote in a sort of psychological sense in any way. Right, that's enough waffle for what we call the little pre-menu. Let's do it. And with us today and giving us a little kind of pre-chuckle before the full chuckling begins is Iain Boddington again. Hello.
Hello, Gareth. Yeah, good.
Yes,
looking forward to this show because there's two topics which are well within my very big interest area.
Within your purview.
Yes,
that's good to know.
Use of ChatGPT alongside the human side. And especially the smart cinema one very much.
Oh, you're going to love that. Oh, you've teased it so well.
People
now they want to listen
everyone.
on the edge of their seats. And I just have to either apologise or take praise for the fact that I have a slightly croaky voice the last couple of weeks. Maybe you'll like my kind of quite low radio gravelly voice, or perhaps it's getting on your nerves. So I'm sorry if I'm a bit croaky, but we'll get through it. It's okay. And coming up today. Now, the problem we're going to talk about today, this problem that's keeping academics up at night, they're incredibly worried about this. Students submitting coursework using the likes of ChatGPT. New research has investigated how well the chatbots foil plagiarism detection systems at universities. So, in today's multiple choice exam, what is the outcome here from this research? Is it answer A, yes, academics should be worried about this, or is it answer B, academics, no need to worry? Well, the answer is very much A, I'm afraid. Oh dear, we'll investigate. Also, as Iain has teased ahead, prepare to take your seat in the cinema, right, that gauges in real time how you're feeling. Yes, it's all right here on the Somewhere on Earth podcast. So meet that perfect student, the model student, completing assignments in an instant, yet achieving higher marks and outperforming most other students. The downside possibly is maybe they're not as fun to hang out with the other scholars, and they're not very likely to join any of the sports teams. But this student, as you probably already guessed, of course, I'm not talking about a real student. I'm talking about chatbots. In fact, this is, and I should put my serious voice on here because this is genuinely worrying new research into what happens when the likes of ChatGPT are used by students to complete their university coursework and exams. Now, I work at a university and I know very well, just for myself, what a hot issue this is. I.e., a student submits their work. How do we know whether it's really their work or if they had a little bit of help, shall we say, from a chatbot? Now, this paper that's just been published in the PLOS One journal suggests that such automated coursework can slip through many of the detection systems that institutions kind of like to believe are quite effective. Let's hear from one of the authors of this new research, Peter Scarfe of the School of Psychology and Clinical Language Sciences at the University of Reading in England. Welcome to the podcast, Peter. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing well, thanks. Thanks for the invite. Nice to be here.
Good to have you. So let's set up some of the problem here, because I suppose the groundwork for your research is you're looking at the kind of work that isn't invigilated. So you're not necessarily under exam conditions with somebody sitting at the front looking at what you're doing. This would be coursework, or maybe some of those so-called take-home exams that we're talking about here then, is it?
Yeah, that's exactly the sort of thing. The kind of educational sector's trying to move away from traditional pen and paper exams for very good reasons. And the COVID pandemic obviously kind of accelerated that process in that overnight we were kind of forced to move from invigilated exams to those which were taken at home. So yeah, you're completely right. The research was very much focused on the problem of AI for both take-home exams and coursework.
Tell us about this study then. What were you looking at here then? You were trying to get something like ChatGPT to try and fool some of these university systems for detecting plagiarism? Just tell me about the research.
ChatGPT had really kind of blown up onto the scene in quite a big way a couple of years ago. There have been some very widely publicised anecdotal reports from educators, across the world who had entered their assessment questions into ChatGPT or another AI, press go, and then graded them, and ChatGPT gained excellent answers. So that is potentially a real problem for the educational sector, because if a student can cheat using ChatGPT, go undetected, and potentially gain a higher grade by cheating, then that really impacts the way in which we can assess our students. So with this kind of background of these anecdotal reports, we're kind of scientists. We wanted to get some hard data. So we came up with the idea of a project which would be a real life test of our examination systems. So to do that, we generated around 60 or so answers to exam questions across 5 modules of a psychology degree. We generated answers to those questions using ChatGPT and submitted those using fake student accounts which were created for the project. And the key thing here was that to the markers, these submissions just looked like any other, basically. And our key questions were, number one, can we detect those AI written answers, which are 100% AI generated? And if not, what grades do they achieve?
And tell me how many of these submissions were successfully detected? In other words, they were revealed as having been created by a chatbot.
It was unfortunately a very small amount. I believe it was around kind of 94% undetectable, basically.
That was the undetected ones?
Yes, exactly.
Right.
So the vast majority got through. And do you mean this would be like a human marker then? You were just relying on the human being just to be persuaded that this was from a real student?
Yes, exactly. So we had plagiarism detection software, but at the time, and I think it's still the case actually, universities are not generally using kind of AI detection software, and we could discuss why that's the case and the problems with that. So yes, it's very much up to the plagiarism detection software and our markers to be able to detect these AI written submissions.
Yeah, and not only were these submissions getting through, the vast majority undetected, but they actually did pretty well, didn't they? Just to give me a sense of how the ChatGPT or the chatbot grades related and compared to real students' grades.
Across all of the modules, on average, the AI outperformed real student submissions by approximately half a classification boundary. So it's quite a substantial outperformance. It's particularly concerning because we generated the AI submissions in kind of the most naive way possible. What we did was we just cut and paste the question into ChatGPT, used a standardized prompt, and press go. And if there were multiple submissions for a given exam for the same questions, we just used the ChatGPT regenerate button. So in some senses, this was the easiest way in which AI could be detected,
right.
or the best case scenario.
Yeah, the laziest student literally just type the question into the chatbot, cut and paste the answer into your assignment and go to the pub. It wasn't even just try and tweak it a little bit, rewrite it, just replace some of the verbs with your own none of that. It literally, this was the raw ChatGPT stuff, got through the examiners. So apart from sacking all the lecturers, no, not really. I'd love to know what Ghislaine makes of this then, because you're interested, Ghislaine, aren't you, in that issue that Peter raised of some of these software systems that universities are meant to have now to detect this kind of plagiarism.
Yes, now I was interested when you said that about universities in the main not using AI detection softwares. Maybe you could tell us a little bit more about that, and then I'd really like to talk to you also about the kind of more companion side of ChatGPT and the future, and what your thoughts are on that too.
AI detection is a really difficult process. OpenAI, who created ChatGPT, released a detection software which they withdrew because it wasn't accurate enough. And there have been numerous companies, both from the educational sector and beyond, who have released AI detection software, but it is generally not recommended to be used in an educational setting to potentially penalise students. Why is that the case? Well, it's really difficult to detect AI written text. So for example, let's say I'm marking a piece of work and my magical AI detection software says, oh, this piece of work is 53.5% AI written. How do I go about proving that at all? It's pretty impossible. The last thing on earth we want to do is to be unfairly penalising students who are handing in their own work and it's been incorrectly flagged by this AI software. So it's very different to, say, plagiarism detectors, where the detector can kind of say, okay, this piece of work is copied from these sources, and it can then list those sources, and then you can go look at those sources and see the copied text. That's very clear indication. Whereas with AI, that's just simply not possible.
So in terms of the future, I'm also working at universities, and this debate is, you're absolutely right, on the table, and Gareth said it too, in every university in the world at the moment. We can see quite a lot happening, debates in forums and in LinkedIn, etc., about ways to deal with this. But one of the areas that I'm interested in is AI ethics discussion. Is, if we look 5 years ahead, in my work, we would consider now that actually, of course, students are going to be working with AI and with ChatGPT. And when you said that about the AI detection software, going, well, I think 53% of this is AI written. How much does that really matter if we actually are starting to look at the students being companioned in a way by AI throughout their education, not necessarily just at university?
Yeah, exactly. Because on the course that I teach on, we're actually very clear with the students that within reason, they can use. We just get it a bit like, but as an example we have is when calculators were first permitted in mathematics, and even in exams, in the maths exam, and I'm old enough to remember that being a big discussion at our school about whether we could have calculators. And it's almost like we're kind of going through that. And sorry, Peter, I will bring you in because you're the guest, and I want to know your opinion on this. But certainly on our course, we feel increasingly that yes, our students should be able to demonstrate as good scholars that they can get the best out of these systems as assistants, but obviously still show academic excellence and then prove to their tutors that they've grasped the main concepts from the curriculum. But enough of me. Peter, you're the expert on this. What do you make of it all?
I agree completely. I think the educational sector has had these disruptive moments previously. And I also agree with you that, our students are going to be leaving university, going into the workplace, and they're going to be using these systems in their jobs. You've already got AI being integrated into, Microsoft Office. So as a educational establishment, both, universities and schools, we need to be in a place to, be teaching our students how to use these systems ethically, because that's what they'll be using in the workplace. So in some senses, your example of the calculator, another example is Wolfram Alpha as like a kind of mathematics solving system. So in some ways, I see this just as a new tool. I think it's a very powerful tool, and certainly much more powerful, I think, than a pocket calculator. But I think the educational sector as a whole is just going to have to revisit our unsupervised assessments with the knowledge that even if we ask students not to use these systems in their completion, students probably will be using these systems. And that's not to say that, all students are cheaters and stuff like that. That's just showing the reality of the situation. These are new tools. These are powerful new tools. and we need to equip our students for their use. We've always had a mix of assessment types at university, so some stuff is supervised, some is unsupervised, and I think that's going to continue.
Yes, yeah.
Certainly I don't want the interpretation to our paper to be kind of, oh God, we need to move every single assessment to an in-person pen and paper exam.
We've seen some very, very interesting potentials for future, human integrated AI work within universities, etc., where modules are set up where you say you can use AI. First of all, we want you to do the AI, very clever prompting, get out the best you can from the AI. Then we want you to go back to that and critique what's come out from the AI and add into it from your own sense. Then we want you to put the two together and give us original critical thinking around it. So I believe new methodologies will emerge very quickly in this around actually ways to extend and enhance our brain use
opportunity,
of our brains.
In higher education, and across the whole of education. We're going to talk more about this in the podcast subscription extra. If you'll stay back for us, Peter Scarfe, if that's all right.
Cool, no, it's fine.
Much appreciated. But thank you in the meantime for your fascinating and important research there. I thoroughly enjoyed reading the paper, and this is such an important conversation. So, Peter, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, then. So, away from the lecture theatre. Now, you're in a different kind of lecture theatre. You're in a cinema, in an auditorium. You're at the show. The action is gripping. It's all very immersive. But, hey, how are you feeling? Well, guess what? The venue knows. It can figure it out. And that's thanks to a new virtual production stage that uses computer-generated imagery, CGI, to help to create imagined worlds. Now, this is all happening at the Old Victorian Gasworks in Bristol in the southwest of England. And Professor Iain Gilchrist is a behavioural and cognitive neuroscientist. He's one of the researchers involved. So you have this virtual production stage, but then also this feedback idea that somehow the systems around the auditorium can work out what the audience are going through. So Iain, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Well, lovely stuff. So it's a 36-seater cinema, isn't it? So just set the scene of the venue that we're talking about here.
We've got this amazing new facility we're building right by the main railway station, so walking distance from the railway station. It's based in this beautiful historic Victorian building, as you say, which used to be the gasworks, providing the gas supply for the whole of the city in the Victorian era. But now we've repurposed it as a new university-based facility, which includes a whole suite of really exciting, innovative spaces to do science and engineering and development to support the creative industries in the West Country. One of the things, potentially the most exciting thing, is effectively what will look like a small cinema. So, it's got an incredibly good projector, it's got a full sound system, you'll sit in a raked seat, it's a proper cinema seat. But actually it's not just a cinema, it's a research laboratory as well, because we can monitor in detail in a whole variety of ways, I'm sure we'll talk about in a minute, exactly what's happening moment by moment to those audience members as they watch that content.
Yeah. So you can see how they're engaging with the material. I say see, you can sense, So you mentioned that you're going to get into some of the things you are monitoring. So what are you monitoring then? How are you figuring this out?
How are you monitoring them?
How are we doing this?
Wearables, sensors, is it in the seats? Is it...
How the heck?
Do you put everybody, gear everybody up before they go in? How is it happening? Yeah.
So I think there are three categories, if you like, of ways that we have been doing monitoring and we will be doing monitoring more in this space. The first category is wearable devices. So we've used very high-spec smartwatches that people wear, which will monitor their heart rate and their skin conductance. So when any human being is more aroused or excited, you get slight changes in skin conductance because you sweat slightly on the surface of your skin. And we can pick up those changes. It's the same technology that underpins the lie detector test, but used in a slightly different way.
Skin galvanic response. Gosh, I'm clever.
Oh,
right,
yes. Right up Gareth Street.
You're ahead of me.
Got it off chat GPT. It's fine. It wrote my questions. It's brilliant.
So we can also use those kinds of sensors to monitor how much people fidget and move around in the seat.
Right.
And we've also already just published a paper where we've looked at how violently and for how long people clap at the end of a performance. So that was live theatre, for instance.
Yeah.
So that's our first class, wearable devices. The second class is probably the more conventional way that we've been doing this for the last 50 years, which is to issue questionnaires at the end of a performance, at the end of an experience. We give people questionnaires, and we also run focus groups to ask them in depth about what they experienced. And then the third class of ways is to use remote camera technology. So we can have cameras at the front of our cinema or in the auditorium or in a concert venue, and we can record how the audience are responding. And we use different types of camera to get different kinds of signals. So we've got thermal cameras. We know that when people change their emotion, there are slight changes in the distribution of heat across their face, believe it or not.
My goodness, didn't know that.
And we can pick up those signals to see moment by moment changes in people's response. We can also, of course, use those cameras to tell whether people smile or frown or grimace or yawn or turn away. We've got visible spectrum cameras, and we also got a camera array which is in infrared, because of course if you're in the cinema or in the theatre, typically the lights go down, and a visible spectrum camera isn't much use to you at all under those circumstances.
Right, so hence infrared. Are you listing even more technology, or is that
I was just going to say that some of those technology allow us to do really nice and interesting things. So for instance, we can use the camera technology to look at blink rate. So we know that when people are paying attention and focusing their energies on something, immersed as you described a minute ago, that blink rate changes. So we blink less. When we're more distracted and less engaged, we blink slightly more. We can also look to see whether people turn away, because we can monitor the pose of their head, and we can see at what point do people eat their popcorn. Do people stop and make that little side comment? You know, when you're in a film you're really not enjoying, what you do quite often when the immersive experience has been broken is you turn to the person beside you and go, gosh, this is rubbish, and go for a pint instead. And we can capture those moments where people are no longer immersed in the content, so the film in front of them, but instead are beginning to become aware of the space around them. Maybe the person they came in with, maybe the stranger who's being very noisy with their crisp packet. And so all that kind of fidgeting behaviour we can monitor and get a handle on.
Fascinating.
A huge number of data points, in real time.
Mass data points, and you're focusing on, like, in a way, behavioural analytics around those multiple data points that are coming into you.
But why? Why do that? Why does it matter?
Yeah,
so I think
it matters.
So I think this new technology, particularly the wearable devices and the remote cameras, has allowed us, really for the first time, to, in a non-invasive way, measure moment by moment when people are responding. That's what we've unlocked, this ability, without tapping them on the shoulder and saying, are you enjoying it? And then waiting 2 minutes and tapping them on the shoulder again and going, are you still enjoying it? We can avoid that because we can do these passive measurements which won't interrupt people's experience, but will give us a moment by moment record of how they're responding. And why is that important? Well, we know that there are a very large number of films made each year which lose a huge amount of money. And there are other films which make huge amounts of money and have a deep and fundamental impact on what people think about, how they feel about a particular topic, they learn new things. And if we can give filmmakers a set of tools which allows them to say, well, we might be losing the audience at this point. This is the point at which the audience is less interested, less engaged. This is the point where everybody turns to the person sitting beside them and is a bit distracted. Or this is the point when people realise that actually it was a wet day on the way into the cinema, my feet are wet, I'm starting to fidget because my feet are wet because I got wet on the way. If we can spot those moments, then the filmmaker can go back and use that as a tool to re-edit the content and maybe take out the points where the edit wasn't quite successful. So we're not going to dictate to filmmakers what they do. That's part of the creative process, but we're giving them an additional set of tools so they can begin to think again about moments in the film or content which may be slightly less successful.
Yeah, but I mean, let me be the film critic here then. I'll be very cynical, and wouldn't I just say, but really, as audience members, they know they're coming into a lab, fair enough, but do they really want to be surveilled just so it helps researchers help the film companies to make more money out of us, which is basically what this comes down to? That's a cynical way of asking the question, or is the nice way of asking the question like, hey, this is a real opportunity to work out what really works with audiences so that the people paying the good money going to the cinema can really enjoy the experience even more thanks to this brilliant research. So I just wonder which side of that argument you might be on.
So what I've described is a process that happens, in that example, a process that happens before the release of the content. So the audience members who come in and become monitored, typically in our experiments, are paid to be part of those experiments. They come in, they know they're going to be monitored, and they've signed,
Right. Yeah.
it's been ethically approved that happens,
Yeah.
and they've
Yeah.
signed a whole set of waivers to explain exactly what's going to happen to their data, how we're going to use it, how we're going to anonymise it, and all those
Yeah.
kinds of things.
That's good.
What we're not talking about is the deployment of this technology in every Odeon multiplex around the country, because by then it's not very useful to you because you've already released the film.
Yeah,
the content is out
too
there.
late, yeah.
Now, I said earlier that it's important that we're not interested in interfering with the creative process, and there are filmmakers who actually don't really care about the audience. They're making something which is extremely personal to them. They've got something that they want to say, and they may be disinterested in some ways. And we're not interested in interfering with that creative process. But there are other filmmakers who genuinely want to make content where they change how people think and feel and behave beyond the content. So if you're making a documentary about climate change, you really want people engaged. You want people engaged in that content, and you want that to be something they're left thinking about afterwards. And maybe, and that's the hardest thing, as we know, as behavioural scientists and psychologists, maybe changing their behaviour in the long term. Now, for those content creators, understanding the impact on the audience is absolutely critical.
I'm really interested in this because I work in immersion experiences, which I know you are also focusing on at this amazing new venue in Bristol.
Yeah.
In immersion, digital immersion experiences, whether it's AR, VR, or just, generative large-scale installations, these behavioural aspects are really important because it's actually about the navigation of actually how you're moving people around, their reaction in various points of time and space, whether they actually do use that corner or get the fact they're meant to pull down that vertical switch or actually do come together in a way which is actually positive. So I can really understand it in that. And I know that VR and AR does give you a lot of points back already, data points back directly just from those particular technologies. So I can see filmmakers, making some shifts, but I think in immersion work, this is absolutely imperatively part of, because it's an interaction between the audience, the user, really, the participant, and the immersion space. I'm really interested in also what you said about clapping, because having been in a live performance sector all my life, I can listen to clapping, and I tell you what it is, it's not just the clapping, it's actually the length of time, nanoseconds, between the end of a show and when the clap starts that really matters, whether you've got the audience like breathing in and then going yes and clapping like mad, or whether they're just like clap, clap, clap straight away at the beginning. And you have this real intuitive sense starts to occur, which is linked to just a few tiny seconds at the end of a show.
And this
fascinating.
Is also, and of course you're able now to have the empirical side of that as well. Glenn actually has that gut feeling. Any performer does, you read the audience.
The
definitely.
more you're in it.
And now, Iain, you're coming in with your analytics, and you can bring those two together and actually do some. And final question, really, I'm putting it to you, as well as all this stuff about helping filmmakers and to create incredible experiences, but just do some darn good science here as well. It's fascinating.
Exactly. Yeah, the quantifiable and the quantitative coming together.
For me, there is a really fundamental scientific question in here, and the interesting thing about human beings is they're easily distracted. If you're doing your tax return, or you've been asked to write a report, or you've got to do your finances, it's incredibly difficult to stay focused on that, and you feel psychologically the effort of staying focused. However, what's amazing is we create, as a society, culturally, we create these artifacts like film and television, and increasingly VR immersive experiences, AR immersive experiences, where we can remain focused for hours. And that's incredible.
Yes.
It's incredible that we consistently, for a very long time historically, have made these things where they capture our attention, we become immersed in them, and we stay focused in them for hours. And if you get caught up in a box set, sometimes you forget to eat and drink. Certainly, I forget to feed my kids.
There's no meaning.
And I think that's really fascinating because in the traditional, and Peter will know this, in the traditional psychology literature, we think of sustained attention as being effortful. But sustained attention
Right.
when you're in the theatre or you're in VR or watching a film is not effortful.
Yeah.
It's
In fact, it's hard
it's
not to pay
poetic.
attention.
It's
Yeah.
it's a flow thing that goes on, and at the end of it, at the very end, particularly whether in a live performance, you do have that moment where everybody's holding their breath,
Yes.
and then
Yeah.
the immersion, that sense of being there breaks, and then you get the applause as you described.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think that's really interesting, and there's something fundamental scientifically to understand there.
Incredible.
And it's all about liveness. And
It's-
that's
oh,
very, very important
can't
in
beat
today's
it.
world. The live response, the
Yeah.
on the spot, real time, live presence
Yeah.
that there is.
I
Yeah.
know, and I'm thinking
Fantastic.
a discussion for another day. But I know, Peter's still on the call from earlier. But coming back to universities, I think lecturers would love to, or probably hate in some ways, to know, how students might be responding during a lecture, for instance. So but I'm on that fascinating thought. I am going to hold it because I'm getting told off in my headphones for overrunning. But it's the producer's fault, Anya, for booking such fascinating guests, because we
Yes.
just go on and on. If only we had the podcast extra. Oh, we do. Lovely. So let's keep the conversation going in that. But you, dear listener, if you can't join us from the subscriptions, see you next time. And I'll just give a quick shout out for the socials, because I think there's a lot in this program that you will want to talk about. So, whether you are a student, for instance, at university, and you have a view about using the likes of ChatGPT as an assistant, or you're sick and tired of people casting aspersions on your excellent work by suspecting somehow that it was not fully your work, you may have a view. And of course, if you're the kind of person who goes out and goes to the cinema and watches films and can identify with everything that we've just heard there from Iain, just what do you reckon? What do you make of this research? So it sounds like I'm setting up a phone in here, but hardly. But I'm giving you an email address. It's hello@somewhereonearth.co. hello@somewhereonearth.co. And on WhatsApp, we are code 447486 329 484, and just search for Somewhere on Earth Podcast, SOEP, and things like that on the socials. But I'm sure you're all very good at just, you're listening to a tech podcast, so you can figure out how to use social media and get in touch with us, I'm sure. Thank you very much to the excellent Dylan for making us sound nice today, and to our production manager Liz for making sure this basically works and stuff gets done, to producer and editor Anya for booking what brilliant guests. That just flew by. And you can as well.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Marvellous. So many thank yous. Thank you for listening. Bye-bye.